Well, I'm delighted to be here, and I'm delighted to see all of you here. It's going to be a very interesting day. As a nice start off with telling us all something that we know. We haven't had a lot of rain for quite a number of years, and water is short. I think that this is the way it's going to be for a very, very long time, probably forever. So what I decided to do today is a little bit different than what I've done at many other talks. It is not a PowerPoint, although it's been put in that format. It is a slideshow. And so my hope here is that now that we all understand, and I think everybody who came here understood, that water really is very important, and we cannot keep gardening the way we have been gardening in the past. We have to really change our whole gardening paradigm, the way we think of it, what looks good. I like that brown is the new green, but that's a hard sell. A house with dead grass in front, that's a really hard sell. So, so hopefully you'll get some other ideas, and this will pique your interest. You'll get all excited about this, and then the other speakers today are going to give you some more details and information that will make you successful at doing this. So right now I'm not going to tell you how, but I'm going to just, I have to give you a warning. This slideshow is not these gardens only at their very best in the spring. The pictures that you see in all the books and magazines and online, right? Let's take a look and see some gardens that are a little bit less, and let's get going because I don't want to run late. Oops. Let's see, am I doing it? There we go. Okay. I like to start with this picture. Let me see where I can be.
And Barbara, you can actually see from here to the slide.
Yeah. Okay.
Here too.
Yeah. Maybe I'll just do
right
that.
there. Yeah.
Okay. So let's start with this picture. This is a front yard. Now what I did was I put together a load of slides. And I grouped them by theme. And the first theme is front yard. And I like this one. This is in Los Angeles. It's Lummis House. And I like it because it's really, really simple. It's got a sycamore, a western sycamore in front. They're non-native, low water use plants in that little foundation garden, and then decomposed granite. This is a very low water use garden, and it's also an extremely low maintenance garden. So I like to start with that picture. Oops, I went the wrong way. Let's keep going forward and give you this picture next. Okay, notice on the bottom it tells you what theme we're in, front yard, where it is, and the date. September 19th, 2013. I was really excited about this garden when I saw them remove the lawn about a week before this, and then the truck came and unrolled sod. This continues in my neighborhood, and I will bet you it continues in many of your neighborhoods as well. Each time I see that lawn go, I get excited, and sometimes I get disappointed. That's the paradigm, and we need to move away from that, obviously. Garden is a garden in Santa Monica, California, so if you guys are ever down visiting the LA area, it's worth seeing. And if you aren't down there, it's worth getting on their website. Just do a Google search for Garden, Santa Monica, and it'll all pop up. They've got incredible material. So what they did was they took two little bungalow houses, small front yards. One they planted back in 2004. They planted with native plants, and the other one they re-landscaped with a small lawn area and a foundation planting around it. For all of these years, they've been measuring how much water, how much time, how much green waste comes off, resources being used all around, and you can see the comparison visually there, but they give you really numbers. This is the front yard of the native plant garden, which is quite pretty. That is Carex praegracilis, or praegracilis, however you like, in the very front in their parkway. The parkway is like 10 feet wide. I don't know, I'm okay with that, but it does require some water, and I think they could have done some more interesting things in the front, but everybody has their opinions. So there it is, and here's the garden that we're comparing it with. The police car was in front, but you get the message. You get the message. It's just a little grassy area, and it's a tiny yard, and one would hope that they're comparing it with the most efficient watering of that grassy front yard, but it's a very interesting website. There again, we come now in and take a look. They've got a dry stream bed in there. They're using boulders, draws your eye, a lot of deer grass, just kind of interesting. So they did a lot to also try to get the water not to run off onto the street. I'm not sure that they're measuring that as well. You have to take a look on their website, measuring how much they're reducing urban runoff in it. But it's a pretty garden, and it's done well over the years. Now, I told you I'm going to be honest with you, and there's the good and the bad. And this is an example, also Santa Monica College. It's their Center for Environmental and Urban Studies, and they have a native plant garden. It's like 5 houses down the street from the other gardens I showed you. The only thing that's of order in this garden is the front hedge of manzanita. I'm pretty sure that's Howard McMinn, which is doing okay. And my objection to this garden is not so much that a lot of the plants aren't doing well. This is looking behind the hedge. There's a lot of wasted space. They're not using that really for anything in their front yard. But there's no order to it. There's no sense to it. It's just a bunch of plants. They're not doing all that well, but we have to do better than just slop down a bunch of plants. We have to have some ideas as to why we're putting them where we put them, and get some design concepts into our landscapes. Things like, it's really a good idea to repeat plants. They did that with the Howard McMinn. I love California native plants. One of each is a theme that I love. It doesn't always work out so well in your garden. So come away with the idea that it's nice to group plants and to, this is not a talk on how to do this. I'm just pointing out things as if we were sitting there flipping through magazines or driving past some gardens as to what can make them work. This garden, I just happened upon this garden in 2008 in Claremont. I was on my way to work. And from the street, it had pretty good street appeal, but when you came close, it has this nice curving path in the front yard, which people are doing more and more of that, having pathways through their front garden instead of just an open lawn. And what they did here, they have deer grass along the front, and it follows that curve, and behind it is some manzanita. I think that is John Dorley. Manzanita, and it's a really nice looking garden. I haven't been back there. I couldn't remember where it was. I will go back and get some pictures now to see what it's looking like. But so that's an example of how more than one of each kind of works to your benefit. This garden is also, most all of them are LA area, so Sun Valley, very hot, excellent drainage. You can see the slope in the back. Yeah, I get this pointer too. It's got a slope back here, so there are always fire concerns. A friend of mine put in this garden, and she put in a grass, which is kind of brown here, a lawn of blue grama and buffalo grass. And I would just warn you, I think it doesn't look this way anymore. I think she's changed it. And I would just warn you that, at least in this environment, putting in that kind of lawn is not no maintenance. She was really after the weeds a lot. She had to hand pick out little weeds that were growing as the lawn became established. She let it go dormant, but it's a small area, so that's okay if that's what she wants and that's what she wants to do, but be aware of what maintenance issues. In the very front of the garden here, she has all these California native plants. This one's even clearer. This right here is a piece of broken concrete, and it says California Native Garden, which she painted on it. And you'll notice back, it's not on this one, it's the next slide. It's a really good idea to do something like this. And California Native Plant Society is going to have its own program where they're going to have a sign which tells people this is California Native Plants. You're trying to change the way people see things, and they're not used to this yet. And so a little sign, a little information goes a very long way. There we go. This is the right there. That's the National Wildlife Federation has a sign for backyard habitat, and now California Native Plant Society soon will have its own program, which is very exciting. Again, I show this picture. She put dahlias up in the front. She uses rocks in here and some interesting pieces of wood, and it all provides some really nice interest. It's a very small garden. This is done by just an individual. She did have some professional help with some of the layout, and that's another good way to go. This is a garden that's a little bit closer to Griffith Park and to the LA River, and the soil is very rich, kind of river soil, And these plants grew very, very rapidly in this garden during this garden tour. It is April, everything is beautiful, but they terraced with these rocks on this small slope. And back in here, you can't see it, but there are those rocks. And again, they provide that kind of structure that makes it look really interesting. This is a beautiful garden with a lot of things in bloom. She has woolly blue curls, a sage, there's elegant clarkia and poppies and baccharis. But they kind of overwhelmed the garden at this stage. It's gorgeous, but I think over time things hopefully got a little bit under control and some of the structure showed a little more. Here we are from the top of that slope looking down, and what I love about the picture is that notice back here, this is what everybody else is looking at, that green carpet that doesn't look like much. She gets birds, she gets butterflies, all those wonderful things are going on in her garden. And she can sit up and look out over her neighborhood and be friendly as well. So let's talk about dormancy. Usually the pictures you see are like the last picture with all the flowers, but in November in Southern California, and I'm sure up here, you just don't get a whole heck of a lot of blooming going on. And I like to get people to love it. Do we love it? Are we all sold? I usually ask this question before I start, and I forgot to. How many of you are just getting going on this idea of removing lawn? Let's just see a show of hands. So we have really a sprinkling, and some people shaking their heads. How many of you already have done this? Wow. Okay, I'm preaching to the converted here. I'm hoping that you'll learn something anyway and that you'll come away with ideas. I know that in my garden, it changes. It always changes, so that's okay. It's not bad. So this one is dormant. It's late in the day. It's beautiful. What do I want to say about this garden? Well, let's just go on from here. I'm not going to say what I was thinking of originally. This is what I really loved in it. I'm going to drive there at night and steal that water filter. Is that gorgeous? Isn't that beautiful? So that's his focal point. He can see that. The homeowner can see that from the window of his living room. He has decomposed granite around it. It wasn't very visible from the street, although as you walked along you could see that something pretty was happening in there. Really nice. Again, you can see the DG across the front coming in here. Really nice way. I have to say this. I'm from Southern California, so John is not out in this audience. He put Cercis occidentalis right here. He has a gorgeous manzanita, one of those big upright Arctostaphylos manzanita, probably Dr. Hurd or something. I don't like this here. It kind of ruins the house for me. But, again, I'm just telling you what I think. And he created a gorgeous garden here, so. Well, there we go. Again, the house again, he has another Cercis occidentalis, which is red bud, another tree right here. And you can see it's bloomed because it's got the pods. He's got some nice symmetry going. You walk in here and that DG path is right here with the beautiful water feature. So he's got a really nice landscape there on the front. I think a lot of good ideas. And I like dormancy. And I'm going to tell one story. I have to watch my time. I think I'm doing fine.
I'll let you know.
Okay. One quick story. So, I've been doing this a while, and I love California native plants. And dormancy is good with me. I'm okay with that. My father came to visit many years ago, and there's a house in South Pasadena that has a very old native plant garden that's been in for many, many years. And I just think it's really a very beautiful garden, a little hard to photograph. And I decided to go for a walk with my father, and we're walking up the street, and we're getting close, and I'm getting more and more excited. And as we approach the house, I just look at my father, and I see him shaking his head and just going, not for me. And it just, I keep this in my head because you're not that typical audience. But, we have to change minds. And that's why I showed you the picture of the garden that I didn't think worked in Santa Monica. And sometimes you have to take baby steps. Sometimes, you do it in various ways. But I always keep my father's comment in my head because I just, for the life of me, could not understand what it was about this garden that was not for anybody. But that's where we're at, and we are the ones out there who are going to have the gardens that are going to convince people that this is a good way to go, in addition to the fact that they won't be able to afford the water, which is really the incentive, as we can see. This again is a front yard, decomposed granite. They're using their front yard, they're sitting there, and they have that kind of tapestry look with groups of rocks or boulders, which is really very nice. There it is, not a tremendously low water use, probably lower than lawn, but sea thrift, Armchair, and there's festuca or fescue, you know, like this is probably the non-native one, judging by those people, ovina or something. But in any event, it's still pretty. It's probably lower water use than many, than lawn for sure. I put this one in because you see back here, this is a street up here, and this is college property, and they were going to build a dorm. And that's what they were confronting. So clearly, your landscape needs to address problems and issues that crop up, and in this case, they need to screen themselves unless they want to look at the dorm that's being built there. Okay, now I don't like to just show like these magnificent ones. Let's get real that not everybody has an acre of property. And this is a really tiny house. It's on a garden tour. They've used mostly wildflowers in their parkway here. This is a Chinese elm, which probably came with the house. Not easy to plant under, and not a lot to look at. Oops, I keep getting that wrong. The reason I get that wrong is because mine is the other way around.
I know.
Okay. So here we are. We walked up to the front yard. They've got that lovely bench. And again, they've become friendly in their front yard. They can see their neighbors. They can talk to their neighbors. They use the DG, and this is really nice. I think right here is just that Indian hawthorn, Raphael epis. They could use coffeeberry, would be a nice alternative if you were going for the whole native things. Okay, so here we go. Bottom one. Okay. Still front yard. This is in a neighborhood in Los Angeles that has these magnificent old craftsman houses, but it's a kind of rough neighborhood, and all around it there's a lot of industrial sites all around it. This garden was done by the homeowners who don't do this professionally, but they're really good, really artistic, and they call it apocalyptica or something like that. And so what they did was they collect like industrial waste, you know, like big machines and stuff, and they incorporate it into the landscape. This right here is Artemisia californica. This is probably Canyon Gray. So it's a cultivar that's a more, it's a lower growing, mounding, draping kind of thing, and looks gorgeous right there. They have monkey flower and other things. So if I did this, where I put in these pieces of in fact, I have done this. It would just look like I have garbage in my front yard. These guys, they use the stone. They really had an eye for it, and I love their garden. They're very enthusiastic about it, and if you're ever down there for the Theodore Payne garden tour, then you should try to see this house. And if, well, let me stop there. Yeah, this whole garden tour thing, that's another way. You know, we're doing it right here as we sit in the dark indoors, but another really excellent way to get into this and to make changes to your own garden is by seeing other people's garden and going out on the garden tour. The advantage of what we're doing is you get to see some of these in November, but you can always go back. So there again, they've used this big thing wherever they found that, and they half buried it, and it looks really cool. It's a very beautiful garden that they have in the front yard. You can see they've got sages and some buckwheat, really pretty. And again, this is a front foundation garden, and this is simple. They didn't have to go out and collect. This is just a really beautiful piece of wood, but they used it really well to draw your eye along. You see the sage back here, and it just, you know, makes for a nice picture, and it's really nice to look at. Okay, this is Claremont, and they had just obviously put this in the winter before. And I like to show this picture because, you know, when I took horticulture classes, also at a community college in Southern California, one of my instructors, who really is an excellent teacher and a very fine horticulturist, would always talk about how native plant gardens, when they're installed, look kind of pathetic. Like, didn't you have enough money to put in enough plants? You know? And he was joking because he knew that native plants grow and get very large and we need to start small so they can get established, all of these concepts. But this picture, this garden really makes the case. So there it is, 2007. Okay, 2005, 2007. Now I promised you, so this is Baccharis, and I'm pretty sure it's Twin Peaks too. And then there are some grasses back here, Elemis now. So Canyon Prince Giant Rye back here. There's some deer grass. You can't see it well, but there is some wild grape in there. They have sweet gum trees that came with the property. Yeah, there's sweet gum trees, and I think a sycamore somewhere. Is that a sycamore in there? So that's their landscape, and wow, what a difference 2 years makes. And there it is again, looking towards their driveway. They did things to try to encourage the water not to run off the property into the street, but to go into the garden. So that's a nice thing to do, and it looks really quite lovely 2 years after being installed. Here we are again, where you can see the grasses and the infiltration area. Looking good, pretty garden.
So they didn't use any wood chips?
No, they weren't.
Gravel?
It's decomposed granite there, no wood chips. They did not go the organic mulch. And mulch, as in everything gardening, is controversial as to whether you want to use wood chips, in what situation they work the best. Mulch in general, exposed soil is not a good idea. It doesn't happen in nature very much, except in areas where there's a lot of erosion. So we do want to cover it with something or allow it to be covered with something, but it is controversial, and they did not use organic. Although they did around the front yard, in their woodland garden, they used organic. They have heucheras and other woodland plants, and there they used wood chips. So they made that distinction, which I think is interesting. So I went back in November of 2013, and I think it still looks, pretty good. It's quieter. It's November. It's not spring. Here's that Baccharis, and I am going to show you what that Baccharis did. Believe me, that Baccharis is this high. And you also know that beneath those green leaves is dead wood. It's all dead, woody stuff. So, with Baccharis, this is the time actually to hire somebody, unless you're young and have a lot of frustrations to get rid of. It needs to be cut to the ground and rejuvenated. It'll come back fine. Should have been done a few years ago. But the garden still looks okay. It worked out pretty good. This is not, no garden is no maintenance. I'm just going to put that out there. Okay, this one really is a lovely, a lovely garden in Claremont. Again, you're seeing the decomposed granite as the mulch, plus the boulders. Boulders just are a wonderful way to show off your plants if you can get hold of them. They have a lot of flowering things. The garden was designed by a professional landscape architect who did an amazing job. We've got some bush poppy here, a Fremont dendron flannel bush here. This is Sphaeralcia Lewis Hamilton, which is a mallow, very fast growing, and a Palo Verde in here. These are, there is some white sage, but these are Encelia farinosa. So again, these are all very dry kind of plants. There's a lupin in there, Lupinus grape soda lupin ex cubitus, and the garden is spectacular. Here we are stepping back. This is non-native. I'm pretty sure it's Arbutus unida strawberry tree. It may be Marina, but I don't think so. And so what the landscape architect, this is a large boulder. He created a wall that goes around in a half circle here, kind of matches this part of the house, placed the boulders, and mounded the soil over on this side. That's the hardscape. It looks lovely with these flowering things, but let's see what happens over time. So here we're seeing it in 2007. Let's go back. 2005, 2007. All the flowering shrubs are still there, and they're still flowering, and it looks lovely. We go on. Isn't that pretty? Don't forget that Palo Verde in the front, the Palo Verde right here. Yeah, we still have everything still going. We have a trichostoma, woolly blue curls in there, looking pretty. And here we are in 2013. They've basically lost a lot of the flowering shrubs at this point. Now they have a choice to put them in again and try to see how long they keep them going the next time. That was the Dendromacon harfortii, which is the island bush poppy, and the Fremontodendrons. But they still have the Palo Verde, and it looks okay. It's not bad. Let's keep going. So you see it now without those flowering shrubs, and it's in November. And that having the front yard mounded provides some interest, having those boulders. And I like the colors and textures of the white sage, the light grays, the sage brushes, and that's what they've got here, even though it's a change in owner and a change in landscape maintenance on this garden, as you'll see in a moment. So here we are again, still 2013, and the boulders and the wall shows up more. So it's fairly sparse, but they're kind of going for the desert look. So it kind of works out for you, even though they've lost quite a number. Notice the Arctostaphylos did fine. The manzanita here, this is the same one, and it's just spread really nice. Another manzanita here. I say a change in maintenance, and that is because now there are new maintenance people, the type that make everything into a sphere. Yeah. So here we go. There it is. They have some winter flowering or late fall flowering. They have fairy duster in there, and they have tuberosa. I know I'm switching between botanical and common names. Hope that's okay. So here's their parkway, and it was a professional landscape designer, landscape architect who did this. Those manzanitas are too big for that space in the parkway. And because this is 2 years later and they're starting to grow over, manzanitas, not a great thing to really be hedging so much. But there they are, hedged away. I don't know how long they're going to love that. But, the message is clear. Pay attention to the adult size of the plant, the mature size. Plant the right size plant so that you don't have to be pruning. And then let it go. Okay, so the next one, we're into parkways now, and this is Elmer Avenue, which is a very working class neighborhood in Los Angeles that typically floods whenever it rains. Now you'll notice in the previous picture there's no sidewalk, there are no storm drains, there's nothing. It floods. Okay, so they went in for, what was it? I copied it down. It was over $1 million. It could have been like $2.5 million project here on this very small street. And what they did was they created sidewalks, they created swales, they created ways that water from the street would flow into the swales and from the house as well. And they planted away in this working class neighborhood. This area is called a courtesy strip because people parking there, this is Diamondia, yeah, that's right, on there, so people can step out of their car. And all is well. Now in this courtesy strip, they just put down wood mulch, which decomposed very quickly, and all of the weedy grasses started to come back, which is, let's be real, are you going to get in there and continuously weed? And if you've got weedy Bermuda grass in there, it's going to come back. But it still looks pretty good, and that's part of the sidewalk allows kids to be outside and families and so on, and just individuals who enjoy their neighborhood.
Barbara, I'm sorry. Could
Yeah.
I ask you to go back one slide?
Sure.
So what we're seeing there is that drain, that's draining from the swale out into the street?
Other way around. It's going
Okay,
from the
great.
street
Great,
into
great,
the
great.
swale. That's the point of it.
Fabulous.
Okay? That is the point of it, was to reduce the flooding that they experience every time we get rains in Southern California. They did that. They put in wiregrass, juncus. I saw a lot of these things, and I guess John will talk about grasses and grass-like plants. So there was wiregrass, there's carex in there, there's deer grass, there's sages, native and non-native, and yeah.
We had the same situation with the weedy side strip. I put
Yeah.
down real thick cardboard overlapping and then the mulch, and that really fixed it. We have no more weeds.
Okay, so
I
for
mean,
those,
I'm sure they're there, but.
yeah, well, I don't know. So the woman in the front mentioned that they had a problem with the weedy Bermuda grass, and they did what's called sheet mulching or lasagna mulching, where you put down cardboard or newspaper and then mulch on top. Again, everything in horticulture is controversial, and I have read that the cardboard is not necessary if you really have a good amount of mulch on top. People who do it with the cardboard swear by it. I did it, it's on my blog, I did it sloppily, so I can't say. Yeah.
Okay, now, one thing about mulching on the exposed soil, which I prefer because
Yeah.
I hate that this, but actually, with the mulch will start now conserving water and is putting organic matter into the soil. I found it boosted my weeds.
It boosted your weeds to
Because-
just mulch without the cardboard.
You know, unless, like, if you do 2 inches, you know, maybe if you did 6 inches, that would be different. But what happened was that, like I said, over the course of, let's say, 6 months, there's enough decomposed organic matter and is conserving the water, so the weeds were pretty
Yeah.
happy about it.
If it is 2 inches of mulch, the weeds are gonna love it, you're right, particularly those weedy grasses. Yeah, I'm not gonna go into that we could have a big discussion on that. She believes that really for getting rid of these weeds, it was important to have that layer of cardboard. I would direct you for the other opinion on this to Linda Chalker Scott.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Okay, she has a piece on whether the cardboard and the spaghetti is necessary. You do need thick. 6 inches may be a little thick because you don't want it so thick that there's no air movement in the soil. But 2 inches is too little. So, you know, whatever. But the point is that you do have to address that and get rid of those weeds. It's still looking lovely. Let's keep going. This is 2010 still. Okay, now I have to go here. I went back right after a rain. And this is what many of the gardens looked like. So what's the moral of the story here is the weeds came back for sure. And not only that, but the wiregrass died. This is 2014. We haven't had rain in the winter. We cannot keep the wiregrass and the carrots alive without watering them if we're going to have no rain during the winter. And maybe we won't keep them alive even with a rainy winter because they require some water. So we need to take that into account. Also, you know, this was put in for the whole block, and a lot of people are not gardeners. You know, they either don't have the time or the interest or whatever. However, look at the street. It's okay. You know, the street hasn't flooded. Now, I told you it was like a $2 million project. They put in this huge infiltration thing under the street. They dug up the street, and there are millions of gallons. I wrote this down somewhere, but I'm not going to go into that. All the water really infiltrates, and it is filtered as well. So they're getting rid of some of the pollutants before it actually goes into the groundwater table. And that's what they paid for, more than this little design thing. Okay, so there's the street, you know, on a typical rainy season, and here is what they have. So even with the weeds, we have major improvement going on here. Here's my parkway in South Pasadena, 2002. I really started this whole thing in 1998. Dug out, I did not do the sheet mulching. We dug out Bermuda grass. I was talking with somebody who did some rototilling. Is oftentimes underneath a lawn that's been there forever and ever, there's a lot of compaction, and people need to do something to get things to grow. On the other hand, when you rototill, if there are roots and pieces of Bermuda grass and you rototill, you've just chopped up propagules and planted them. So I didn't rototill, we just kind of dug it off and kept as much topsoil as possible. I don't have a whole lot of problems with weeds. Here are my plants that I was going to put in. That's a magnolia by the stop sign. And as we go along, planted, very easy, very simple. I like the wildflowers the first few years. Over time, wildflowers don't grow particularly well in my parkway now because I have lots of mature shrubs and I have more shade from the trees. So just like in nature, if it's an undisturbed site over time, the wildflowers, you know, we need a fire to really get the wildflowers. And hopefully I won't get that. I would suggest that you do something that I didn't do well enough in here. If you've got little plants in there, you got to, you know, clear away the wildflowers enough to give them a chance. Some people use wildflowers, annuals, as sort of nurse plants to protect those young plants from the sun the first year. But then you need to have annuals that are growing up a little so that they can breathe. The plants that you want to keep over time can breathe. So I should have cleared that away. It's okay. It all worked out. It looked great those first few years, which was important to me. And there it is, much more 2005. It still looks basically like that. I don't buy mulch. I take the leaves from all the trees and just place them around there. That's what the parkway still looks like in August this time of year. It's you know, very dormant looking. These are the oak trees. I planted 3 Coast Live oaks. They were from 15-gallon, but don't tell the city because they required 24-inch box. Had they not had that requirement, I would have put in probably 1 or maybe 5-gallon. But anyway, they've grown in really nicely. I have a repeat of deer grass. It's hardly any work. It gets no water. The only thing that gets watered in there is new plants. When I put in something new, then I'll drag out a sprinkler and water once a month during the summer. But it's really low maintenance at this point. Let's see how we're doing 30s. There you go. There's, you know, the big maintenance on this. I do a lot of sweeping of the sidewalk because I'm kind of like that. Just to let you know, this flower is Mexican evening primrose. It's a weed. I didn't plant it. The birds did. I usually pull it out, but sometimes I like the pink flowers. The main maintenance is sweeping and also cutting the grasses back so that people don't trip on them. And that's the future of this garden, is that a lot of these deer grasses that got huge, I removed them. I'm going to do that hopefully we get some rain. I'm going to dig those out. I'm going to cut them up into pieces, and I'm going to plant them all over the front yard. I already did that right in here. There was a gigantic one. It's just too much to be constantly going out there and clearing them off the sidewalk. This is the front yard, which I started in 2011, decided that's it. And this is how my garden has developed over time. I walk around the yard. I told a woman that I was speaking to earlier today, my husband does the inside, I do the outside. We sort of have veto power on our own terrain, sort of, but we try to keep things friendly. And he does like some lawn, you know. So I have to be careful, and it's been happening over a very long gradual period. Parkways are the hardest thing to water. I have sweet gum trees in the front there, and I just had enough by 2011. I stopped watering, had it dug out, and then again the wildflowers. This one I planted a lot less than the side parkway, and I would have loved big boulders, but I just didn't have them, and I didn't pay for them. So I went up into the Angeles and collected some rocks, you know, and I made drifts of rocks. And then I planted grasses around them. A lot of them died because we've had so little rain, and I'm not a great waterer. But I wanted to be honest with all of you guys, and this is what it looks like now, basically. The wildflowers are low maintenance are very little work to plant. They're a fair bit of work to clean them up after they've gotten done blooming, and I usually harvest the seeds. So I was pretty proud of this picture because it looked a lot worse before. This is one of the wildflowers of Gilead, and I had Phacelia in there. And then I have some of these grasses which will come back. They're needle grass mostly in there, and they'll come back year after year. Okay. Here's a garden. It's out in the Inland Empire. It looks nice, got a lot of blooming. Again, the picture of dormancy. I just wanted that comparison. So this is what it looks like in August. And the California buckwheat has that beautiful marooned rust. It's really a rust color, which is really pretty. So I think their garden looks very nice. It's just dormant. Again, to give you, this is the then and later, to give you a sense of the time, how long does all of this take? My house, I don't know how they actually grew this grass. We moved in 98, and the grass then was really thick and lush. This is a deodar. There were little impatiens all around the house, ivy growing over a fence and holding the fence up. I must have watered, otherwise that grass wouldn't be green in August. So I just stopped watering. Because that is a shady garden with trees all around, there was really no Bermuda grass. It likes more sun than that. And I just stopped watering it. This is what it looks like now, basically. You can see there are some toyons, which provide it with color late in the year. In November and December, we get the red berries. I have, a little bench, and I have a walkway in there. This is non-native carex, Berkeley sedge. And it looks pretty bad because my dog, who recently passed away, but he used to sleep on that, and so it was nice. So how did I get there? Okay, because I'm not a landscape architect, I'm not a landscape designer. I talk to a lot of people, so I have a lot of information, and I've done a fair number of things, but not for all different people in all different yards. I just stopped watering. I sort of marked out where I wanted the beds, the garden beds to be, and how I wanted the land to be used. I wanted it to be a seating area, a quiet seating area. I placed the bricks a little bit better. The bricks I just found around my yard. I don't know what that's about, but whatever. I stopped watering. I threw mulch in the garden beds, again from the leaves around my yard, and just kind of waited, planted a few native plants, left some of the ones that were non-native over time. So that's, let's go back for, whoopsie, I hope I didn't flash something. 2004, December 2004, the next summer. And you can see how much has happened, and I put down a lot more organic mulch in the garden there. So a lot has happened. Things are starting to grow up. This is a wild rose. It was not going to bloom. That's a shady spot. And it was doing great, but I decided to get rid of it because if it isn't going to bloom, I didn't want it, and it's going to be a painful plant. So again, a message is that, you know, think about it. You can take out healthy plants if they don't work the way you originally intended them to. This is another kind of painful plant. It's Ribes speciosum, which is fuchsia flowering gooseberry. I love that plant. And that plant is still in the garden and looks really quite good. Does require pruning back, and I do that when it's dormant. So let's keep going. There's my dog. Aww. And we got a new fence. I took off the ivy. It wasn't that hard. This is Rogers Red Grape. It was planted away from the fence because it was planted before the new fence was put in. Once it went dormant, I just dug it out and moved it next to the fence. That takes a lot of work to keep that under control. That's a small space for that much grape. So now I'm waiting for it to go dormant and I'll cut it back. And the stem along here looks really cool now. You know, just like in a grape vineyard. So there we are, the garden's coming along. That's March 2006. There's clivia, which is non-native. I didn't plant it. It's just, it's still there, but it's really behind a lot of stuff now, so it doesn't really bloom. And going on, the needles from the deodar fell in the garden. I left them there. Here's that Ribes speciosum, and you can see, well, you can't really, but the rose is gone. This is another Ribes called Claremont Pink Currant. It was beautiful. It died a few years ago. I had it for many years, and it really was spectacular. Maybe I'll put it back in. Some of the plants, a lot of the plants there go dormant. I don't water much. Here it is in November again. So what I do is I prune up the toyon because it's a very narrow space, and I wanted a screen. I could have put the toyon on the other side of the fence, but I didn't, and I'm not going to go into the reasons why. I think it works this way, and I kind of like looking at the trunks. There we go, July 2012. The Berkeley sedge is looking particularly sad there. And here we are, November 2013, and this is how it looks now. Very, very low maintenance garden. You can see that the Ribes speciosum is completely dormant. It is at this time of the year that I trim it back, and what I do is I keep 3 major branches that kind of sweep off. But what they do is they send up little branches, and they go down. It wants to be a thicket, a huge thicket, which is wonderful habitat, but it's a very small space, so I don't really let that happen. Another garden for this one I'm going to talk about walls a little bit and some concepts, some ideas there. And again, a then and later, again, my backyard. This is a old garage that was falling down. And this is an oak tree that's a volunteer oak. I live in an area that really wants to be an oak woodland, and acorns sprout all the time. We didn't let that grow. It's about 60, 70 years old. But keep that in mind. When we moved in, this was all green. Whoops. Pushing buttons all the wrong way. When we moved in, this was bright green grass, and there was an emitter that was sprinkling the crown of the tree. Now, the tree was not planted before development. The house is 100 years old, and the tree is about 70. So it's been getting water for a fair bit of time, but I'll bet not from the beginning, because they didn't have an irrigation system in the beginning. So what I did was I turned off the sprinkler head that was sprinkling the base of the tree. That was like day one I did that. I just turned that sprinkler head off. And then I gradually, over time, watered less and less over the summer. And now there's no grass there. I didn't dig it out. I just let the oak leaves do their job. And you'll see that, so there it is. I was actually talking about the walls here. And we had a wedding in our backyard, and we had that old ugly fence that was falling down. So we put up a new fence, and rather than, this is my neighbor's garage, rather than extending it across the front of the garage, we made use of the garage as part of the fence. And I think it looks better, and it's certainly better for the garage, because otherwise it just would have accumulated oak leaves and rotted out. I'd like to take credit for that, but it was a landscape designer who gave me the idea. And we painted the garage with permission from our neighbor. It all worked out. We have some manzanitas that are doing badly in here. We have some toy, and I really wanted more coverage there, but you know, I got the oak roots under there, so I get what I get. The manzanitas are not doing well any longer. I'm going to leave them until they disappear. What is doing really well is Ribes viburnifolium, that's Catalina perfume, and also the creeping barberry. Very nice, doing extremely well under the oak, and they're planted around the edge. This is standing where the garage used to be and looking towards the house, and that's what it looks like now. It's just oak leaves. And I usually dig under and get some of that partially decomposed oak leaves and spread them in other parts of my yard. The oak tree is very happy, and it's very little work here. This is really low maintenance. That's flagstones on a bed of sand for a patio. This is the landscape designer who suggested we use the wall of the garage instead of extending the fence. And again, I think he's made really nice use of his chimney here. I just love that. You know, it's not no work, but if you're a gardener and you love that kind of thing, I think it looks really pretty. It's just very eye-catching to have all those pots with all those low plants, and to hang a few on the fireplace, on the chimney as well. This is deer grass, and I love the way the shadows are. How am I doing here? I'm not going to finish. Okay, I wish I had taken out the leaf there, but I love the shadows. The only message here is that the deer grass wants to get bigger than that space, and that's going to take some work and some maintenance. This is espalier flannel bush. That's Dara's gold. Again, high maintenance to keep it in size and keep it in the space, but that's gorgeous. Again, that's the same designer. I just wanted to show something really simple. This is just a screen, from Home Depot, and I want to point out the neighbors water a lot, so this person put in a lot of plants that like water, so she could take. If you're going to put flannel bush because you don't want to water, and it's next to your neighbor who's watering all summer, you're going to lose it. So you have to think beyond your property line. Okay, let's see, 89. I'm going to go through these kind of fast. This is Romney culturite. Okay. Yeah, and it's what a crazy idea. Very, very narrow space. So they put that wire across. There's a wire across here and here. And then after it does its spectacular business, they cut it down to the ground, after before it goes really dormant. I don't know what it looks like at the wrong time of the year. I think that basically the bed is empty most of the year. And I just thought that was such a cool idea. This is the landscape designer Andreas Hessing, who suggested the garage thing. And he also does these rammed earth walls, which he's done in his own very interesting garden. And he's doing one here at Rancho. And I like to show this because they use this as a Dudley wall, just been installed. I think that's really pretty. I think they're changing out those Dudleys pretty often. I think they're having a hard time being happy. But okay, it's really pretty. The poppies look great. The dry stream bed plus that really interesting wall. Yeah, there it is from stepping back a little ways. Pots, oh my God, what you can do with pots, especially if it's your hobby. Dudleys are so wonderful in pots. Grasses in pots, I think this is again the non-native fescue, but grasses in pots are really spectacular. And that's a little strawberry, a wild strawberry draping down. Very pretty, classic looking. I love this one because this is Lavaterra, which really doesn't want to be in there, but it looks great. So what? So you keep it for 2-3 years and then you're on to something else. This person tried all kinds of crazy things in pots. This is bladder pod right here. Isomerus arborea, now peritoma or something. This is again these kinds of concrete-y looking modern pots full of grasses and unusual plants. Go ahead and try it. Rancho Santana Botanic Garden has a container garden, and they have some people there now who are really artsy, and they put in really cool things. into them. So a good place for ideas, check their website, or better yet, go visit them. They put these Dudleyias. This is Dudleya hassii. Look at this. Look at this. Is that great? It's just this little, I don't know how long they're going to live like that, but they're really cool looking. I just thought that was really nice. And then here's an oak tree. This is Santa Barbara Botanic Garden. People always want to plant azaleas beneath their oaks. Don't do this. This is not good. Any oak. Do something like this. Put it in a container. Get it on a rock up above. The little bit of water from watering your container will be fine. And you've got color and you've got an oak and everybody is happy. So I like that. This is a homeowner's garden, and they've used colorful pots. I think they need more benches. Maybe I was standing where there was a bench. I look at that and it's like, where's the seating? I want seating. But I think it's really nice. This is a landscape designer who does magnificent work. And the chairs are sitting down low with the rocks behind them. Don't you just want to go in there and have a little tea party? Yeah. You can use creative benches. I just love that bench. That's Lily Singer talking. This is a Scharfenberger garden, and it's just a wonderful bench. Santa Barbara Botanic Garden, made out of big logs. If you've got the wherewithal, that's really nice bench. I really like that. Rancho, very peaceful. These are the gardens, not that green slab that looks so ugly. So I'm moving through these quickly because I want to get you to, but you can get some ideas of what people are doing. You know where I'm going. Santa Barbara Botanic Garden. That garden in Claremont, again from the top looking at the boulders, which do such a wonderful job. Okay. Oh my goodness, where am I? Here we go. This is where I want to get you. This is where I want to end. So this is a school garden. I just lifted this off of the website, Prisk Native Garden in Long Beach. It's a hot site. And it's the corner, it's the edge of a playground. And they were going to make a native plant garden. Note the time, it's 1996. They dug out concrete. This is the garden in 2011 in April. I haven't seen it when it's off season, sort of dormant. It looks spectacular in the spring. They don't do a lot of maintenance in the summer. They let it go dormant in the summer. So probably, I think it always looks maintained. That's an acre. And this is what they turned it into. It's not just the wildflowers. This is a mound. This is mounded here. And it's a really interesting garden that's set up according to community. So it has woodlands, it has island plants. They did a community base. Here it is looking out into the schoolyard. In this little 1 acre, they created a whole world that is really very peaceful. From the sidewalk looking in, it's got a chain link fence, and there's an oak woodland on the other side. And it calls you into it. The temperature drops by many degrees, requires very little water, does require maintenance and work. This is looking in, and we're looking at a pond. Much has happened to this pond. I suspect it looks better from the sidewalk at this point, but they have a pond for the students. And I want to leave you with this message that there's so much we can do in these little spaces we have with a little bit of imagination and some work. And if we let go of this idea that we have to have this unchanging green thing in front of our front yard, carpet in front of our front yard or backyard. So that brings us to the end of it, and I think there's a couple of minutes for questions.
Sure, yeah, let's do it. Any questions?
Yeah, we have one down here.
I was interested that there was a Peter Payne garden tour. Is that on the web, or is that every year?
It is every year. They've had, I think, 12, they've been doing it for 12 years. Theodore Payne Foundation is a nonprofit for native plants. They have a tour. It's in April. It's on the web, Payne. The website is theodorepayne.org. My house is on it like every other year, and I did it because I like a year off. So I don't think I'm going to do it this spring. But there are a lot of really fabulous gardens, and the hardest thing in LA is driving around to get to them. You want to see them all in the traffic. Not good. So, any other questions?
Great. Thank you so much,
Okay.
Barbara.